Da, da, da. Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Now, Logan isn't here this week. I've got it open, so if he can make it, he'll join later. But it looks like it's going to be a solo show. I've got tons of stuff planned to talk about. It's going to be a fun one. And it's been a great week for gaming news, from Star Wars to Oblivion and everything in between. It's going to be a good time. And if gamers have anything to complain about at the minute, is that there's too many games and not enough time, which is a good problem to have, considering in the past there's been droughts, there's been times where games get delayed. This year it's not giving up. Non-stop releases. Like, we've had a Ninja Gaiden Shadow drop and an Elder Scrolls Shadow drop, and it's only April. So yeah, it's going to be wild. Anyway, before I get into all the topics, which there's like 50, I'm going to go off what I've been playing, because I've been playing some good stuff. I finished South of Midnight. I may have mentioned that last week, I can't remember. I've been playing more Death Stranding. People may be getting sick of me talking about this game, because every single time you see footage of Death Stranding, it's a dude walking across hills, just mountaintops, whatever. And I get its reputation for being a FedEx simulator, but it's so much more than that. It's such an interesting game that's basically Kojima unleashed. No one telling him no to basically any story or element. Like, that's a game where you can literally pee on the ground at any given time if you want. There's pee grenades. There's poo grenades. They're called ones and twos. It's completely out there. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but my God, what an interesting game. I've also been playing Avowed. Look, I think a lot of people didn't really expect an Elder Scrolls game to actually get shadow dropped the way it did. So my original plan was to finish Avowed, get that out of the way. Not that I'm saying I'm bored of it, but get it out of the way. But Oblivion's a 500-hour game basically, and that's with the expansions. And Avowed, it's this 30 to 60-hour game which I'm playing 30 minutes at a time. Not exactly the most efficient way of using my game time. I'm aware of this. It's a me problem. It's a skill issue, if you will. But my God, I'm so giddy at the minute because I've been a gamer my whole life, and I'll obviously be talking about Oblivion later, because I've got the whole list of everything that's changed in the game, everything that's been added. But I've been a gamer my whole life, and there's certain releases throughout the years that they stick out. You see a screenshot, a GIF or video, or you hear a piece of music, and you taken back to that year that game came out, the year you played that for the very first time. And for me, it's things like Fallout 3, Oblivion, Gears of War, things like that, and Mass Effect. No surprise to anyone. But Oblivion for me, that was a standout title in 2006, where I played so much Oblivion that I actually ended up getting 2 copies because I wore one of them out. So that's how much I like that game. But anyway, I need to be way more efficient with my time. I've got review copies coming of upcoming games, so I have to get through these games. I need to be more efficient. You know what? Before we get into all of the big topics, I want to talk about Expedition 33 quickly, because this has actually been a point of contention today. A lot of fans are celebrating that, hey, they're going to get to play this technically new Elder Scrolls game. And, a lot of people are going to revisit the franchise again. But people have been wondering, why would Microsoft release this when Expedition 33 is right around the corner? It launches in 2 days. And I completely understand people's thoughts about this, because it is a big release. I personally think that Expedition 33 is going to be one of the biggest games of 2025. I do think it's going to be going down in the Game of the Year category. But it is a bit strange to launch an Elder Scrolls game 2 days before what I would like to say is Microsoft's most marketed Game Pass third-party title. So it is a bit weird. Maybe I'm an enigma when it comes to this type of thing, but honestly, for me, it's not an issue. I play multiple games at any given time. I've got several going on at the minute outside of the Warzone stuff I'm playing, and I'm going to be playing Expedition 33 this week. And a lot of others will be as well. Expedition 33 is apparently a 30-hour RPG, not including side quests. And, I'll be hopping between that and Avowed and, Elder Scrolls. I'm definitely not efficient with my time. Not to mention Doom is out in a few weeks. But to me, I think the game will be fine. It's had a lot of eyes on it for about 2 years now, ever since it was first announced. It's going to be a big game. A lot of JRPG fans alone will be looking at this because it has a world map. It's turn-based combat. It also has, traditional third-person movement when it comes to exploration. So there's going to be a lot of fans looking at that. It's a new studio. Like the game, they've already made a lot of money off the Game Pass deal. There's also studios involved in getting the rights to make movies based on Expedition 33 because there's so much buzz around it. Plus, it does help that you have big actors in the game such as Charlie Cox and I can't remember his name, the dude that voiced Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movies. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name, but I think the game's going to be completely fine. I don't think Microsoft maliciously went out there to say, hey, screw this turn-based, RPG because we launch an Oblivion this week. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's just them wanting to get the game out because, look, we heard 2 weeks ago that this game was going to stealth drop randomly 2 weeks ago. It never happened. Some people didn't even think the remake was real, and we'll get into later whether it's a remake or a remaster. My God, I've been talking about this on Twitter. Some people do not like it when you call this game a remake. But I think Expedition 33, it's going to be perfectly fine. It's going to be a big release. All eyes are on this. You have big actors in the game that's talking about it on their social media. When they do interviews, they're talking about this game. And I wouldn't have any issues with this game. I think it's going to be completely fine. And plus, out of all the big games that's coming this year, Expedition 33 looks like one of the most interesting releases. It's doing something different. It's actually taking a risk because you have this kind of subset of gamers that every time they see turn-based combat, they kind of, tap out. They don't want to play it anymore. Me personally, I think turn-based combat can be fun. Depends on how it's done. And honestly, how can you not like turn-based combat? You can literally play with one hand and eat a sandwich in the other. Andy Serkis, that's it. I don't know why I forgot his name. And I watched The Batman the other night, so don't know what's going on there. Maybe too much alcohol. But anyway, Expedition 33 is going to be completely fine. It looks like a fantastic game. It really is. And yeah, that releases in 2 days in Game Pass Ultimate. I think that studio, they're going to have a huge success with this. And we'll probably get multiple sequels off it because they said they have this universe planned. And it's something unique, which I think gamers are going to like. You know what? We have 50 topics left, and we'll just get straight into them because, my God, what a week for gaming news. Literally. Okay, so Microsoft launched a Doom console and controller app. Now, this one actually does look really good when it comes to the console app. I've been saying for a long time, and a lot of people have been saying this, that Microsoft needs to do these for every first-party major title, like for Avowed or Indiana Jones, maybe South of Midnight, but it can't cost that much to get these out there because, look, this isn't the days when, a game would come out and Microsoft or Sony would make a physical console to put out there on shelves that would cost, a lot of time, money, and space. These are flat-packed things, right? A console app is next to no space, easier to make, and, there's people that collect them. Let people have more. I just want a Mass Effect one at some point. We need third-party ones as well. Battlefield. Look, if you're on Twitter a lot like me, you've seen Battlefield non-stop for the past month and a half. And for some reason, every time EA, Activision, Ubisoft, they put game tests out there. You sign an NDA, right? You can get sued, even go to prison if you break an NDA. But for some reason, with the new Battlefield game, people are going out of their way, posting sometimes hours of footage, and it boggles my mind, right? Like, I don't know if this is true, but allegedly, I'm saying allegedly, that when a certain Microsoft game got leaks about a decade ago, apparently the person that signed the NDA and leaked it got sued for like 30 grand. I don't know if that's real or not, but I don't get why people go out of their way to leak, NDA material out there when you could risk your job and your livelihood, It's completely out there. But with that said, Battlefield looks fantastic. Normally when you have destruction in these games, we all know the deal, right? These consoles have limited memory, PCs as well, depending on which setup you have. But to have full-on 100% destruction in a Battlefield game where rubble and just pieces of like walls and ceilings and stuff, they don't disappear after a certain amount of time. We haven't really seen that in a console game before. I don't know if I've seen that in a major PC game either. It looks super impressive. I know a lot of people have kind of zoned out on Battlefield at the minute because they've had a string of bad luck. Battlefield 3, absolutely incredible back in the day. Then you had Battlefield 4, which had broken netcode. Your campaign couldn't save, so you had to play the whole thing in one go. Battlefield Hardline was cops and robbers, and the game modes weren't fun, and the weapons were terrible. What after that? Battlefield 1, gorgeous gameplay. Great gameplay as well. Great visuals. But a month after release, everyone started using sniper rifles. Nobody was using the medic kits anymore. So there was no reason to even play that class. And then Battlefield 5, as gorgeous as that game was, they pulled support. It didn't have a proper single-player mode. And when they gave it a Battle Royale mode, nobody played it. Because Battlefield and EA have a tendency of chasing trends. And then with Battlefield 2042, what did they do? They put in operators. Now, I mentioned this last week, and I'll mention it again. I don't know why the game industry is obsessed with operators at the minute. Battlefield has always been a class-based franchise, so why would you chase what Call of Duty and Rainbow Six Siege is doing? It doesn't make any sense. It angers me. Stop chasing what these other games are doing. It suits Call of Duty. It suits Rainbow Six Siege. It doesn't suit Battlefield. So I'll say it was cringe. It was really cringe when Battlefield was doing it. Didn't suit it. A bunch of drama aside, it looks like they're going to do things right with this game. It's going to have a Battle Royale mode, which looks like that's going to be free to play. It's going to have traditional multiplayer with small and large maps. There's going to be a bunch of small game modes. So things like Team Deathmatch, whereas traditionally the big maps are for things like Conquest and Rush. And it's also going to have a single-player campaign. We haven't had a full-on single-player campaign since Battlefield Hardline, and that was pretty short. So it looks like it's going to be an exciting release. I think a lot of people should look forward to this because it is the first major Battlefield game in a long time that looks like it's going to be a full game at launch. And I still can't believe that EA charged full price for what feels like a free-to-play multiplayer game with Battlefield 2042. People at the minute complain about the prices of video games and stuff. My God, what they were doing with Battlefield 2042, I have no idea why that wasn't being reported on all the time because they were getting away with murder. People are complaining about what Sony's charging for games, what Nintendo's wanting to charge for games, prices going up and stuff, which we'll talk about. Battlefield 2042, it's a free-to-play game wrapped in a full-price package. I don't know what they were thinking. And to have Battlefield go back to modern day, it just feels so good. I don't know, look, Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, World War 1 and 2 will always look really good visually with the highest graphics. It will always be that way. Ever since you stormed the beaches of Normandy in Medal of Honor on the PlayStation 2, it's always looked good. But when it comes to playing multiplayer with friends and, having a full-length campaign, it has to be modern. It really does. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but it's what fans want. And it feels like we get shoehorned this World War II game every couple of years that nobody wants. We had 2 decades worth of World War II games. Personally, I've had enough. Battlefield 3 is my favourite Battlefield game of all time. I love the campaign. The multiplayer was spectacular. I just want a modern version of Battlefield 3. That's all they have to do for me. Obviously they'll throw in the whole Battle Royale mode. And apparently, and this is actually good news, Battlefield, we'll just call Battlefield Next. Battlefield Next Battle Royale is apparently going to copy Warzone. Now, when I go to chasing trends, this is the one trend I'm okay with. Because Warzone, especially with the new map, Verdansk, which is actually the first map, they nailed it. As someone that does actively not like multiplayer, Warzone is addictive, especially on that new map. But yeah, Battlefield, it's heading in the right direction. You have Vince Zampella basically taking charge of the game, and you have Criterion helping with the single player. It looks like it's going to be a good game. Now, when it comes out, will EA treat it right? Will they rush the developers? Will have broken netcode? We don't know. But I'm rooting for them because I don't think people can take another bad Battlefield game. People complain about Call of Duty and Halo. My God, the state of the Battlefield community is terrible. There's so much crap happening behind the scenes. I won't even get into the whole, Battlefield 2042 did not launch with a scoreboard. A multiplayer first-person shooter didn't have a scoreboard. Think about it. That makes no sense. What were they thinking? And the developer's excuse was like, who needs a scoreboard in 2023? Or whenever the game launched. Like, are you out of your mind? That's one of the major things you need in a multiplayer shooter. You check to see how well you're doing. Are you the highest on the board? But yeah, Battlefield 1, I loved that game when it first came out. Really fun, gorgeous graphics, had really good aerial combat. That's one of the things I love about Battlefield games, the aerial combat. They absolutely nailed it in that game with the biplanes. But yeah, Battlefield 1, they pulled support on that as well after, it feels like 6 months. But hey, it's a good step in the right direction for Battlefield because, my God, they've just not had any luck with that franchise. Anyway, let's talk about MindsEye quickly because this is an impressive-looking game. And, it's made by one of the directors of one of the previous Rockstar titles. And this is his new game. It's a quasi-open-world, cyberpunk, third-person shooter. It looks like everything people would like. However, the game comes out in a month and a half, and we haven't seen any extended gameplay. Now, personally, I think we are sometimes overexposed to video games. We don't need hours of footage, but for this, we haven't seen any raw, uncut gameplay that's longer than 30 seconds. Not even 30 seconds. I'll say 5 seconds. And MindsEye, this is no criticism. Like, I think MindsEye looks fantastic. I think the story looks great. You've got the lead actor from Mafia 3, who's really talented. The story looks cool. The world looks great. We just need to see some gameplay. Because, it has been described as a fake open world, much like a Mafia game, where you have this open world in a linear setting. It can work. It can really work. But we just need to see it in action. And I think, there's a lot of GTA fans that would be all over this if they just see the action. See some extended gameplay, maybe some driving, maybe some combat, because the combat in the game did have some Max Payne 3 level vibes. But yeah, that's that. And, maybe people reply to them on Twitter. Tell them that you want to see extended gameplay because at the minute, we don't really have much. They've put out 2 trailers, not really sure much of anything. Now let's move on. Star Wars. Now, if you're like me, you crave sci-fi games. You crave Star Wars games. And you might actually crave Star Trek games, but you've came to the realization that we're not going to get any AAA Star Trek games, so you've gave up all hope. And I could cry myself to sleep at night knowing that Star Wars does actively get AAA games. Well, anyway, a new Star Wars game was just announced, I think 3 days ago, called Star Wars Zero Company. Now, this game is actually set for been wanting more Clone Wars era games. And let me tell you, this game looks bloody fantastic. Before I continue, we've got the first super chat today by Nick Wendland. Thank you very much for the $4.99. He says, Blueprints is awesome. I'm happy to hear that because I just downloaded it. That game looks really cool. It looks kind of confusing, but it looks like something I can learn over time. But that game has had a lot of eyes on it. I've seen people in my feed talk about how it's their game of the year. And to see a game developed by, I think, like 1 or 2 people get so many eyes on it, this is probably going to be one of those games where you're going to have these huge AAA games, up for Game of the Year. And then you're going to have Blueprints there as well. Because a lot of talk about Blueprints. Like, my friend that I play Warzone with, he's been talking about it a lot as well. So, like, clearly, a lot of people really like that game. But I will be checking that out this week. It looks super cool. And again, I like that some of these indie games are trying something different, even though it might seem kind of niche, but it looks cool. But thank you for the $4.99, Nick. But yeah, Star Wars Zero Company, that game, it looks great. It is basically Star Wars XCOM. And I know XCOM style games can throw people off, but the truth is, if you don't like those style of games, just play it on easy. You're going to get to experience the story and not have any of the hassle with, boss battles and maybe some grinding. But all in all, the story looks super interesting. The game's going to feature multiple different classes in the forms of a smuggler, a bounty hunter, a Mandalorian, and a Republic trooper. The game looks super cool. I love the Clone Wars. I'm one of the people that got into the Clone Wars pretty late in 2020, and I fell in love with the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars is incredible. The Clone Wars was there the whole time, and I didn't actually realize how good it was. And now I just want video games set in that era, preferably with that style. But this is a step in the right direction. Hopefully we'll get more of them. And, Respawn's also helping making this. And as far as I'm concerned, Respawn have never made a bad game outside of Titanfall 2 multiplayer. I could rant about that all day. But Star Wars, we're finally getting a new game that comes out in 2026. Hopefully early 2026 because, next year is meant to be pretty busy for Star Wars games. And EA might be launching 2 Star Wars games next year. So who knows? But yeah, if you like XCOM style games, or if you like Star Wars, or both, this is definitely one to keep an eye on because, again, it's a Clone Wars era game. We really need more of these. Now, let's see. Okay, we can make fun about this one. Ubisoft, they've had some issues in the past year for, Star Wars Outlaws, people hating on that game, although I'll tell a funny story about Star Wars Outlaws. So, everyone here listening knows that Star Wars Outlaws had this absolute hate train before the game came out, and even afterwards, and I got the game after the game got patched. So I can't even talk about what it was like if it had bugs. I played it in December, post the main patch. So anyway, this game had a huge wave of hate. You had massive content creators with millions of subscribers hating on this game daily because it was the new thing to hate. Well, fast forward about this past weekend, my friend that I play Call of Duty with, he told me he downloaded the demo for Star Wars Outlaws, and he bloody loves it, right? And he was mentioning how he doesn't understand why this game has been getting all this hate. He loves it. And it just goes to show that maybe when a game comes out, the forced hate train seems to come out for every game now. I'm saying it at the minute for Oblivion, which we'll talk about in a bit. But, like, Ubisoft have had issues. Not all of it's their own fault. This one kind of is. So Ubisoft is looking into making a new Battle Royale game kind of like Apex Legends. Now, the past few weeks I have mentioned how I've grown to love Warzone, whereas I used to be someone that made fun of the game mode, this free to play battle royale thing. But yeah, Apex Legends seems to be the one multiplayer battle royale mode that no one really talks about. I see Fortnite all the time. I see Warzone all the time. Even PUBG, to an extent, I see all the time, but nobody talks about Apex Legends. Am I still salty that we got that instead of a Titanfall 3? Yes. But to see Ubisoft not learn their lessons, because they did actually come out with an Apex Legends style battle royale about 3 years ago. And it lasted about 6 months, I believe, and nobody played it. I did play it. It was terrible. But yes, I think Ubisoft, they really need to get back to what they were doing beforehand. Like before 2014, they were coming out with different games all the time. They were all very different from each other. You had Assassin's Creed 4, which introduced naval combat in an Assassin's Creed game, and it was bloody amazing. You had Splinter Cell Blacklist, which had the best stealth gameplay of the entire franchise, in my opinion, and best combat. You had Rainbow Six Siege, which came out slightly later, but that was doing something different. You had Far Cry 3, which reinvigorated the entire franchise, because remember, in Far Cry 2, your weapons would break, they would jam, and you could actually get malaria. Wasn't exactly a fun time, and could be a bit annoying. But like Ubisoft had all these different titles, and they had smaller titles as well, which people loved, and which I loved as well. There was Rayman Legends, which introduced the musical levels, which were actually my favourite parts of that game. You had Valiant Hearts, which was this World War One, I believe, like story game. It's been so long since I played it, and they even came out with like a JRPG centric platformer called Child of Light, which was very unique for Ubisoft. And the only problems they had was they couldn't get them out the door fast enough. Splinter Cell Blacklist was delayed multiple times to the point where the Wii U version basically shipped at the same time. You had them cancelling ports allegedly for Splinter Cell Blacklist on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. I could go on. Ubisoft having problems with Assassin's Creed. Their Assassin's Creed problems have been going back to 2014 with AC Unity. I just wanted to see Ubisoft get back to how they were in 2012. Have a huge variety of games. That's all people want. But at the minute, I don't know. And look, like I said a few minutes ago, Star Wars Outlaws, I do not think it deserves an ounce of hate that it gets. Not at all. People can complain about maybe the third-person shooting mechanics could be a bit more tighter. I can completely get that. But it's a fun game to the point where, I actually find the card game, Sabacc, genuinely fun. And I say that as someone who actively can't play card games. People have tried to explain poker to me about 50 times. It just doesn't stick. I do not understand poker on any level. But Sabacc, I can play any game of Sabacc and win. I feel like Lando Calrissian at that point, but still, that game is fun, and I will defend it. Even Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, that game's fun. It's basically Far Cry for hippies, but it just works. Fun game, highly recommend it. Gorgeous world, one of the best open world games when it comes to visuals and just fun gameplay. The fact that you can jump off your Ikran, fall through the air, hundreds of feet, and then hit giant leaves to slow you, you're falling. It's a fun game, especially if you're an Avatar fan. And I am a huge Avatar fan. But yeah, what can I say? Ubisoft attempting a Battle Royale game again in 2025. Not exactly the best. Okay. So while I've been talking for the past 10 minutes, I've been wondering why is my phone flashing. And I'm not even kidding. My iPhone has been dictating everything I've been saying for the past 10 minutes. Because I didn't know iPhones could do that in the Notes app. Okay. Give me 1 second. Jesus Christ. Okay. So yeah, turns out you can actually activate Siri within the notes. Who would have thought? But yeah, that's Ubisoft. They're having problems. Hopefully they get the stuff together because, like, look, nobody really wants a brand new battle royale game in 2025. You're either playing Warzone or Fortnite or PUBG. Apex is a joke in my opinion. But yeah, what can I say? You know what? Let's talk about Marathon quickly because, like, look, Marathon's been all over the place since it was first announced. And I'll be out there. Like, look, I've been saying since Marathon was first announced that I do want a, and I say this as someone that does not want single player, multiplayer games. I've been saying that I want an extraction game I can play solo because I've watched a lot of Tarkov in the past. Escape from Tarkov just looks super fun. It's an interesting game. And to me, Marathon has been that game that will be, the extraction shooter on console because the two that's available now on console, they're terrible. Absolutely terrible. And this, it's sci-fi. It's a first-person shooter. It looks like it could be really cool. It's made by Bungie, so you already know it's going to have excellent gunplay. And everything that's came out about that announcement has kind of made the game kind of look bad, The fact that it's going to be a premium title. It's going to be supported by battle passes. The fact that this came as a shock to me 2 days ago when I found out. Everyone's loot or stash gets reset after every season. So, whereas in an extraction game, the whole point is to, do you risk it all, go in with nothing so you can get the maximum reward? Or you take all your gear in with the greatest risk, right? It's a risk-reward situation when it comes to extraction games. Well, you might have like an entire army of these cool sci-fi weapons and armor, and then one day you'll wake up, the season started, and your stash is going to be empty. And I know Tarkov does that to some extent, but I think that is a bad move because you're going to have long-time Destiny players that play it, and they're going to wonder where the armor went one day. They'll think that did it accidentally get wiped. But like that game faces a very steep uphill battle because, like, I know a lot of people listening might not like multiplayer games or extraction games, but like extraction shooters are going to be the thing developers are looking at over the next 2 to 3 years because not Battlefield, but battle royales have kind of run the course. I don't think anyone's going to make any big new ones, although Ubisoft, they're going to try and that will fail. Extraction shooters are the thing that we haven't had on console that have been done right. And some of these companies, they're looking at the situation thinking, look, if we can be the first to the market to get an extraction shooter popular on console, they're going to be the ones that pop off, right? There's 2 games that have tried. They've both failed. And, like, if one of them can get it right, especially with a sci-fi game such as Marathon, it could be freaking huge. Like, people think Destiny's huge. If they could get this right, it'll have tens of millions of players. Because a lot of console fans don't actually know what an extraction shooter was or is. And what I've noticed over the past month, when huge content creators with millions of subscribers, they talk about Marathon and extraction shooters as they are battle royale games. I don't know why they keep doing this. Like, it's kind of like, it's misinformation, because you're basically lying to people saying, hey, it's this thing and it's not this thing. It's stupid. An extraction shooter is very different to a battle royale game. You don't have a circle that gets smaller. There's no eliminations in battle royale style. It's stupid. But anyway, Marathon is facing an uphill battle. Now, the uphill battle got a bit worse about 2 days ago because we had the DMZ2 leaks. So for people that don't know, DMZ is Call of Duty's attempt at extraction. It's terrible. I downloaded the whole thing again about 3 days ago to see what it's like because I haven't played it in a couple of years. It was 68 gigabytes for this one game mode. And let me tell you, what a waste of space. That is a terrible extraction mode. But anyway, DMZ2 sounds really good. And I think this is why people that are looking forward to Marathon need to keep their eyes on this one as well, because this one sounds, I'm not going to lie, significantly better. So anyway, this is everything that's going to be in DMZ2 as of now. Newly enhanced AI will be introduced. So if you played DMZ 1, you'll know that the AI is kind of terrible. All enemies, they don't miss. They run straight towards you. They barely use cover. And even though that does seem like, it could be easy, it's actually pretty difficult. Because every shot these enemies would make would actually hit you. And it'd be really annoying to the point where you just didn't want to play. And you'd actively stay away from enemies. Because you want to get good weapons. You want to get past enemies. The problem with that game is the second they see you, and they tend to be in groups of 3 to 8 people, you're kind of screwed, which isn't the best for that genre. Each game will consist of 12 to 16 teams of 3 each match. It will have designated DMZ maps, major updates for every 2 seasons. Smaller updates will arrive every mid-season. The game will launch with 4 maps and a headquarters. DMZ will be separate mode from Warzone and MP. Events will occur in real time during matches that are crucial to your survival. Next up, 2 game modes, PvE only. That's the big one. And PvPvE. I hate that term, by the way. Oh yeah, and free to play. That last one's key. Because no developer has gotten Extraction to work on a console, and this being free to play, it might be the one to be popular. It might be. Because Extraction on console at the minute, if you've played any that are available, like I said, there's 2. They are both, and I don't want to be mean to the developers, absolutely terrible. Like, so bad, to the point where I don't know why people would want to play them. So we basically have Marathon and DMZ 2. Whoever gets it right first, they will be the popular one. Now, Marathon being a premium title with 3 maps. Think about Extraction games, for people that don't know. You don't need a ton of maps. The maps just need a lot of variety and a lot of buildings with interior spaces. So, Marathon having 3 maps, that could still be... Yeah, Vigor is a Extraction shooter. It's terrible. I personally don't like it. I can't remember the name of the other one. I believe the logo is pink. No, purple and yellow, but I can't remember the name of it. It's a melee-based one with like a World War II aesthetic. But I don't think, limited maps is like the worst thing for an Extraction mode. I think it's them wiping your stash and not having a solo-only mode, because you can play Marathon solo, but you're going up against other teams of 4. 3. Yeah, 3. So who knows what's going to happen with these? Now, we could get to a point where Extraction modes just don't get big on console. That might happen as well. Will console gamers want to play these types of slower, methodical type of experiences? Because, look, as someone that's watched a lot of Escape from Tarkov, that thing is entertaining, but it's super intense, and something like that on a controller, could that work? Will fans want that? Will that appeal to the masses? I honestly don't know. I really don't know. I will say this, though. I think that one of those 2, Marathon, DMZ2, will be the one to do it. I think it's probably going to be DMZ. It being free to play is like next to 0 barrier to entry at that point. So, yeah. Who knows what's going to happen, but yeah, you have Marathon launching this September and DMZ2 launching in 2026. DMZ2 isn't meant to launch with a new Call of Duty game, so I suspect it's going to launch in Battlefield. I keep saying Battlefield. In Black Ops 2 sequels post-launch content. My God, that is a mouthful. But yeah, looks like that'll be coming early 2026. I hope both do well. It's good to have variety. And, if DMZ does take off, I think you'll be hearing a lot more from it, from like big content creators such as like Tim the Tapman and stuff, people that cover those types of games. They need all eyes on this type of genre at the minute, because Escape from Tarkov is the only one that gets covered. And that game has had a lot of controversy the past year. In fact, last year, in 2024, the company behind Escape from Tarkov launched a $250 bundle which locks the single player mode behind it. Right? So if you want to play the single player Tarkov on PC, you have to pay $250, which is crazy. You know, we talk about prices all the time on this channel. That is ridiculous, and everyone forgot about it after a week, which is crazy if you think about it. Jeez. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Let's talk about this quickly because I think this is going to be one of the biggest games of the year, and that is Crimson Desert. Now, they recently showed off some gameplay behind closed doors at one of the events in Japan, and everything I've seen so far, there's some stuff that isn't public yet. I think people are going to be blown away by this. It kind of has elements of The Witcher 3, Red Dead Redemption, Skyrim, and Tears of the Kingdom, all rolled into one. And what can I say? Like, I think this is going to be next year or late this year's, major, how should I put it, fantasy game. We tend to have one or two fantasy games every year that just absolutely pop off. In 2022 we had Elden Ring, which surprised everyone. In 2023 we had, what did we have? Oh yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 and Hogwarts Legacy. And last year, did we even have a big fantasy game last year? We probably did. But it seems like we get a big fantasy game every year or so that absolutely pops off. And, Crimson Desert, outside of Oblivion, I do think that's going to be it. It's going to have millions of eyes on it. On a technical level, it's super impressive. You have realistic destruction in certain buildings and trees and stuff. You have, what do you call them? NPCs that live, like, full life cycles throughout their day. So an enemy or an NPC character will actually go around, go and get a bite to eat, do their job, go back home, get some sleep. And that's all of the characters in the game, apparently. So, like, if you're a fan of The Witcher 3 or Red Dead Redemption, if anything, it looks like it has more in common with Red Dead Redemption 2 than anything, with the amount of gameplay mechanics. It's absurd. It really is. Excuse me, I'm drinking tea. But yeah, Crimson Desert's going to be one of the best games of the year. Now, it doesn't help that every time they show footage off on Twitter or on YouTube, I don't know if they're using the console version or a low-powered PC version because the frame rate is pretty atrocious. But again, it's early code. These developers tend to show off beta or alpha footage, so when the game comes out, I'm sure it's going to be good. The developers have had a track record in the past to have games that can perform really good on console. Black Desert Online, in my opinion, on console actually does perform pretty well. Although that game is actually getting a next-gen version in June, where, for people that don't know, Black Desert Online for Xbox One and PlayStation 4 is actually getting shut down in June. So, yeah. Brave move, by the way, by an MMO developer. And for people that don't know, Crimson Desert, it's set in the same universe, but it's single-player. And my God, if people aren't familiar with Crimson Desert, there's probably about an hour's worth of footage on YouTube which you can watch. It looks incredible. Like, you can see the Witcher DNA in there. You can see the Red Dead Redemption DNA in there. Even the blimp mechanic from Red Dead Redemption 2, that clearly looks like it's in this game. Lots of stuff from Tears of the Kingdom with the falling from the islands in the sky type thing. It's going to be a must-play game. And, if you go back to 2018 or 19 on Twitter, I've been talking about this game since about then, 2018-19, when the game was first announced. And, people always telling me this is vaporware. But I was also told the same thing about Wu Chang Fallen Feathers and Black Myth Wukong, right? Despite its, controversy and it not being on Xbox at the minute, people were telling me for 2 years that game's vaporware and it'll never come out. I think we need to actually trust these developers more, and these games do come out. They may take their time, but they do come out. But Crimson Desert, it looks like it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. It doesn't have a release date yet. It does have a release window of 2025, late 2025. I suspect that's going to be one of those games where they are going to wait to see what's happening with GTA 6. All eyes are on GTA 6 at the minute, to the point where if you go back to Twitch Galaxies, the stream from last week, or any like summer showcase last year, or even the Jeff Keighley Awards, we keep hearing the vague 2025 release window. A lot of developers aren't wanting to commit to release dates just yet. Even a release window, they're not committing. So, like, up until today, like, there's some games that aren't getting release dates up until, like, a week before they come out. So, 2025, it's going to be a great year for video games. But, my God, it's going to be really weird for how packed the first half of this year is. Like, we'll get into the first-party Microsoft stuff in a bit, but, like, it's, the 22nd of April, and Microsoft's launched, Avowed, South of Midnight. They published Ninja Gaiden Remake, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black Remake, and Oblivion, all within the span of a few months. So like this year is going to be stacked for video games. But yeah, Crimson Desert. If you're unfamiliar with it, highly recommend check it out. It's probably going to be one of the best games of the year. Now, let's talk about Doom: The Dark Ages. So, I've criticized Microsoft from their marketing for a long time now, how they don't seem to market their big games much anymore. Halo does, but basically everything else doesn't. Indiana Jones had some decent marketing. They even had I believe they actually had a blimp over Germany and over the US at some point, in Australia, with a life-size plastic Indiana Jones hanging from the blimp. It looked really cool. So they did market that well, but I feel like everything else, Microsoft kind of takes a back seat when it comes to marketing. Avowed was barely on television where I live. South of Midnight, barely on television. A lot of their other first-party games, next to no marketing. But you can't say that about Doom: The Dark Ages. So imagine my surprise. I'm watching WrestleMania. Bethesda randomly put out a post saying, look, they're going to show a new trailer for Doom: The Dark Ages during WrestleMania 41. Now, I didn't know that WrestleMania would show trailers for like outside things, like outside of sponsorships, during their show. So I was really intrigued to see how they're actually going to do this. So anyway, WrestleMania Night 2 comes on. And the second best match of the night, and I believe it was the second match, Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre, Scottish wrestler, walks out in Doomslayer gear. And there's like a Doom helmet on this like stand type thing with a shield. Basically comes out as the Doomslayer. And there's Doom: The Dark Ages plastered all the way around the ring and all the way around the apron, because they have these like apron screens now, which I didn't even know you could do that. But Doom: The Dark Ages was plastered everywhere in this massive stadium. And after the match had finished, they showed the trailer, much like how they would show trailers and adverts during the Super Bowl, right? So that was actually really cool, and it's the best Doom trailer to date. Absolutely incredible stuff. You can see how they're leaning into the cinematic storytelling, which we haven't really had for a Doom game since Doom 3 on the original Xbox, and even then it wasn't that cinematic. But they went all out for marketing when it comes to Doom. And it's crazy because, Doom's going to be a huge game. It's going to sell millions of copies on all platforms. They'll probably put it on Switch too at some point. It's crazy how Doom: The Dark Ages is clearly having this huge marketing push, with accessories, hardware, the games are going to sell out, the collector's editions, there's different kinds of collector's helmets, but like the marketing, putting that on at WrestleMania, I can't even imagine how much that would cost to have a full, 2 minutes, 30 seconds segment dedicated. And bear in mind, this is the first WrestleMania that's on Netflix. So you have possibly tens of millions of people at home seeing this Doom trailer, which is pretty cool. And as someone that was watching WrestleMania on Netflix, flawless. No problems whatsoever. Although the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight, my God, they clearly use that to test out their streaming when it comes to tens of millions of people watching, because that was glitchy, but WrestleMania, chef's kiss. But yeah, Doom the Dark Ages, plastered all over the place at this huge stadium in Vegas. So it must have cost an arm and a leg to put Doom there. But yeah, Microsoft, they are clearly willing to spend the money to advertise stuff if they think it's going to, do numbers. Which is kind of weird contrast if you look at it, because Microsoft also shadow dropped an Elder Scrolls game. And I'll get into why I think they did that in a minute, but hey, if you're a Doom fan, you've only got a couple of weeks left. I think it launches in, 3 or 4 weeks. The game looks phenomenal. I think them leaning a single player was clearly the right move to do, because, look, I'm a single player gamer, but when it comes to Doom, they should always just stick to the campaign. Leave the multiplayer stuff to things like Quake, right? They've got enough multiplayer. Doom just needs to be single player. And they clearly made the right choice with this, because it looks phenomenal. I don't know if even people caught this, but in the trailer, there's like a half a second segment where the new BFG is a crossbow. And it looks so cool. I think a lot of people are going to be giddy when they see this game in action, because the stuff I have seen that isn't public, oh my God, people will be surprised. So yeah, Microsoft, they clearly going all out for Doom, which I didn't actually see them doing whatsoever. And it will make me wonder what they're going to do for things like The Outer Worlds 2. And apparently Microsoft has other games coming out this year, which they haven't even announced yet. So, absolutely crazy. Crazy. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? We'll talk about this quickly. Now, Xbox typically has a partner preview event every March. And there were rumors that Microsoft was going to have one last month. Obviously, we're in April. That came and went. But there's been rumors for the past 2 weeks that there's going to be one this next week. I can't see a partner preview event happening at all now. Microsoft announced their summer showcase last week, which I think is the 8th of June. But they announced that. Everyone knows the date. It's also going to have an Outer Worlds 2 direct straight afterwards, much like the Starfield thing and the Call of Duty thing last year. So, to me, why would you announce a summer showcase when you've still got a partner preview coming? Now, I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I just can't see it happening at this point. We've had the rumors about the Final Fantasy titles, which I still 100% believe are coming. If you're Microsoft, surely you would announce the partner preview first and then do that. If anything, do a partner preview and then have the Elder Scrolls event afterwards. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I just like these showcases, but it is weird for Microsoft to not do a partner preview this year. It is a weird one. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Let's get into Oblivion. Oblivion, it's, for people that don't know, Oblivion launched in 2006. It was one of the marquee titles for the 360 back in the day. To have a PC that could run the thing, you needed an absolute monster to run that on PC back in the day. So, a lot of eyes were on this game. It was the open world game to play on an Xbox 360 back in the day. And, as soon as you step out of the sewers for the very first time and the music hits and you're into that open world, there's something that captures 2006 so well, outside of the dated graphics, but it's such a vibe. And I don't like to use the term aura, because I feel like people use it constantly now. This is aura, that's aura. I hate the way people use that term now. But you know what? Elder Scrolls Oblivion in 2006, do you know what that was? That was aura. My God. When you stepped out of that tunnel or cave, we'll call it the sewer, for the first time into that open world, the music hits. What a magical feeling. I've been saying for years that Oblivion is better than Skyrim. Its main story is better, shall I say. You just get what that game is the second you get into that open world. And, it had its expansions, which I still haven't played. Skyrim, came out in 2011. Its graphics were far superior than Oblivion. It was basically a generation ahead on the same hardware. And, what they did with Skyrim back in the day, it was incredible. You had dragons, you had dynamic events happen. It was just a fundamentally more impressive game. And when it came to visuals, just the amount of items in the environment, the way dungeons were laid out, they all felt really different from each other. And ever since 2011, the only Elder Scrolls game for single player we've had is Skyrim. We had Skyrim in 2011. Then we had the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versions in, I believe, 2015 or 2016. Then we had the Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 enhancements in 2017, yeah. And then we had the Xbox Series X enhancements in 2021. What a mouthful. Well, for an entire generation of people, Skyrim has been that game. Right? Skyrim's been that person's Elder Scrolls game. Everyone's seen the memes because, I'm going to sound like an old fart when I say this, but like back in my day, Oblivion was the memed game, right? But for, 14 years, Skyrim's been the memed game, When you wake up and you're on that cart, that's been a meme. That's been going around for years now. And you get it, a whole generation have grew up with Skyrim. That's their Elder Scrolls game. But, this is going to be a new Elder Scrolls game for millions of people. So whereas you're going to have nerds like me that want to replay this game with a shiny new coat of paint, you're going to have the majority of Elder Scrolls fans that have never touched Oblivion. So whereas we may have to wait till 2026 or 2027 for the Elder Scrolls 6, which we'll be talking about in a minute, Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remake, I'm calling it a remake, and I'll get into that in a minute. It's such a fundamental title for Microsoft, and they just shadow dropped it. I use a British term, I'm gobsmacked. We've had the rumours for the past month and a half that this game was going to drop. That it was, remade visually. All these upgrades, all these gameplay improvements. And I'll go over them in a minute because I've got the whole list. I'm actually shocked that Microsoft, they have so many games at the minute that they decided to shadow drop not just any game or just a big open world game. They decided to shadow drop a 300 to 500 hour game, which is a remake of one of the most beloved games of all time. It doesn't make any sense financially to me, because, to me, if you had this game planned, you would maybe market this 3 months in advance. Hey, we're going to talk about it now. We're going to release it in July. Maybe do a direct in May, get people hyped for it, show more off during their summer showcase, maybe have a little direct for the game. They didn't do any of that. They spent zero money on marketing. And do you know what's happened today ever since that announcement? There's 560,000 people watching live on the Bethesda YouTube channel. There was over 70,000 people watching on the Xbox YouTube channel. As of about 3 hours ago, there was 150,000 people, I believe, playing concurrently on Steam. That is a video game with zero marketing dollars. Now, as someone that did marketing back when I did, business at college, let me tell you, it's genius and crazy at the same time what they've done. My God. It doesn't make any sense, and they've pulled off something incredible, right? Because, any other publisher would have literally hyped this up for months. Rightly so, because The Elder Scrolls Oblivion is one of the most amazing games. It's an iconic game, which I think everyone needs to play, and everyone will get to play now. They shadow dropped a remake of one of the most beloved games of all time with no marketing. And, the even crazier thing is, it's a £49 game. £49. Now, I actually had to refresh the page a few times to see if this was real, because I was thinking, surely this is going to be, the £70 game. No, 49. £49. And you get this remake of a 300-hour game, 2 expansions, a bunch of DLC. And yeah, you can pay $9.99 if you want to get the deluxe edition upgrade. But I've never seen anything like it. Like, outside of the whole quality of the game and everything the game has, which I'll talk about in a second, like, from a marketing standpoint and from someone who studied marketing at college, it doesn't make any sense. So maybe they did have a plan to market this a little bit, and maybe they got sick of the rumors. That also does make sense. But just from a marketing standpoint, I just want to put it out there, what they've done is crazy ingenious at the same time. It doesn't make any sense. And if this was like, you know, Bobby Kotick type of Activision thing, this would have had its own event with, like, you know, 200 people in a crowd. This would have had celebrities on stage talking about their experience with the game. They would have had James McAvoy on stage talking about how he had to burn his disc because he was so addicted to playing Oblivion in 2006. Right? That's what they would have done. But no, Microsoft, they shadow dropped it. Absolute shocker. To the point where Xbox Live was having issues when they shadow dropped it because clearly everyone was refreshing the store page. But yeah, just want to put that out there because as a person that really liked doing marketing in college for business, my God, bold move. But yeah, let's go over all the details because, wow, there's so many. So here's a bunch of the stuff coming to the remake, which is available now. And if you have the fastest internet on the planet, you're probably playing this game or you're playing it via streaming. I'm still waiting for the bloody thing to download. It's at 63%. Anyway, this is everything that's in the remake. So the game has 100% remade assets. The game has a whole new lighting model, global illumination. Now, this one I didn't actually see coming. Lip syncing for dialogue. Now, you have different races in the game. You have the Khajiits and the lizard people. So those characters have lip synced dialogue as well as the humans, which, look, as fancy as a remake I thought they would do, I never thought they'd do lip syncing for all of that dialogue because Oblivion has an untold amount of dialogue. Anyway, they also have new dialogue in the game. The game has enhanced UI, a new UI, a HUD, and a map. Now, yeah, I'll get back into the whole list of upgrades in a minute. My internet, I have good internet for my area, but 128 gigabytes in a download I started 2 hours ago, bit tricky. But hey, I'll play it tomorrow. My God. By the way, bit of a tangent. Am I jealous of everyone that's playing it right now? Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I would love to be playing Oblivion right now. That's some, like, you know, space age internet stuff. Anyway, so the game's going to have new enhanced UI, new HUD, new map. When it comes to the things I wanted in this game, I only wanted a few things to be added into the Oblivion remake, and that was sprint, and that was enhanced UI, right? And HUD. As much as I love Oblivion, the HUD elements in the UI in that game were absolutely terrible. Now, the aesthetic was really cool. They were clearly designed to be, you know, in the style of, like, old scrolls or old text. You know, really cool aesthetically, but functionality-wise, wasn't the best. You know, pressing B so you bring up the menu, going back and forth with the bumpers and triggers to select different menu segments. It wasn't the best, but it looks like they've really fixed that. They've put the compass at the top of the screen rather than the bottom. I always hated that with Oblivion. So they've basically taken the best elements from Skyrim, because they learned a lot from Oblivion. They've taken the best elements from Skyrim when it comes to usability, leveling up, and put them in Oblivion. So you're going to have the best of both worlds with this one, which to me, oh goodness. Anyway, the game has Skyrim-style leveling. So leveling your character is much like Skyrim. Also, the game has level scaling, much like Skyrim. So you're going to be able to find a certain camp or cave filled with enemies. Maybe you've leveled up a lot. You're going to be able to go in with a sword or a simple spell and wipe everyone out. Super easy, which is really cool. The game has whole new animations. And now just before the show went live, I saw a bunch of animations when it came to, riding around on a horse or getting off and on a horse. If you played a lot of Oblivion, it would be, how should I put it, kind of awkward, riding a horse in that game. The animations would be pretty stiff, janky, but it looks like they fixed all that stuff. It has enhanced combat and reactions. So in the original game, and I really do know this because I've played the original recently, enemies wouldn't really react to you hitting them with a sword. So there weren't really any hit markers. You couldn't tell if you hit an enemy outside of them making a noise, and the animations wouldn't really show whether you've hit them or not. Well, in this remake, they fixed that. Enemies spray out blood or whatever when you hit them. There's hit markers in this game, much like you would with like a Call of Duty game. Enhanced bow combat. Now, using a bow in Skyrim can be fun. Using a bow and arrow in Oblivion is the opposite of fun. It's torture. And Oblivion, back in the day, when you're using a bow and arrow, there wasn't a cursor in the middle of the screen. Or shall I say an aim and dot. But they fixed that, which is really cool. So if you want to play through this game as an archer, which back then I would never recommend, now it's going to be completely playable. They've kept in the mini games people liked. So for me, I really like lock-picking mini games in video games. Maybe I'm like in the minority there, but I just really love lock-picking mini games. Well, they've kept that in this. They've also enhanced it a bit. It has modern third-person view. So if you played Oblivion in third person, one, I feel sorry for you. Why would you do that to yourself? Old Bethesda games in third person didn't exactly play that good. I think their third person games got good with Fallout 4 and Starfield. Oblivion, not so much. This has a modern third person view. It's over the shoulder, aiming over the shoulder, zooms in as well, which is really cool. So if you want to play through as an archer, it's going to be super fun and super modern. Also has enhanced first person view as well. Sprinting has been added to the game, which, thank God, you can spend a lot of time in that game just walking around, and like maybe you don't want to ride a horse in that game. Maybe you want to explore on foot, but not being able to sprint away from enemies. It kind of felt weird. It really did. You know that scene in Austin Powers when that guy is going to get run over by the steamroller? That's what it's like when you see enemies in that game, right? You can't run away from them. It's just this slow, methodical thing, wanting to get over with. And you can't even run away from them because they can move the same speed you are most of the time, and you can't sprint. So an enemy such as a fly or like even an enemy crab, right? They can follow you across the entire map because you literally can't outrun them. And I should know. I've done it. The game's also got 4K, 60 FPS, all that stuff, all the latest Unreal Engine 5 features. This game, it looks phenomenal. It really does. Before I continue, we're about an hour and 8 minutes into the show. If you're enjoying it, I hate doing these ads. If you're enjoying it, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. I've got really cool things planned and also on-camera content coming soon. Super chats are live if you want to support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Anyway, Oblivion. It looks incredible, right? I've been posting footage on social media for the past 48 hours of the original Oblivion. And even though it is 4K 60, it is HDR, it's a 2006 game that's aged pretty badly. And what they've done with this game is fundamentally a remake. Now, there have been people online that have been arguing with me about, them calling it a remaster. Like, look, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? This is a remake. I don't care what anyone says. It's a remake. If I have to say it out loud, I shouldn't have to, but if I have to say it out loud, it should make more sense. If you remake all of the assets in a game, isn't that technically a remake? Because when you watch the, Aliens 4K edition on Blu-ray or on Disney Plus, you're not seeing the same film remade with, new CGI and animatronics and different actors. Like, it's a remaster. This is a whole new game, but with the same framework. To me, that's a remake. Gears of War Ultimate Edition, right? Same game, but 100% remade assets, redirected cutscenes. It's a remake. Saints Row the Third Remastered is literally just a 4K 60 version of that game. Remaster. So when I see this game in action, my God, it's a remake. If we throw the terminology out the window, for the past week, people haven't believed that, one, it's real, and two, it's just going to be an up-res port. We can't look at this and saying it's an up-res port. I have noticed over the past 48 hours, there's a segment of the Elder Scrolls community. They seem pretty angry that this game exists. And I honestly don't understand why. If you want to play the original, it's still there. Have at it. It's 6 gigabytes. I mean, it'll take you no time to download that and play it. And it's got tons of mods and all that stuff. But if you want to play this game, fancy new graphics, great gameplay elements, this is going to be the version to play. And this is going to be the version that introduces that game to millions of people. So, the team's done an incredible job. And for people that don't know, this is Virtuos, who also they are working on the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, which launches this August. And that game looks incredible. They clearly know what they're doing with Unreal Engine. And I think, a lot of studios are going to have their eyes, I should say publishers are going to have their eyes on Virtuos, because if people want remakes of, 360 era games, they're going to be the studio to get. They clearly know what they're doing. They wanted to keep the game as original as possible, but while enhancing it. So all the little funny dialogue things from the original, those are still there apparently. And even there's certain item glitches that people liked from the original are in this game as well. So keeping in glitches that people like in a remake, I mean, that's a good sign. I think people are really going to enjoy this game. And if you're new to Oblivion, let's just say I'm jealous. I would love to play this game for the first time again. And essentially I'm going to, but my God, it's a remake. People are going to love this game. There's so much wonder in just, I don't know how to put it. When you play Skyrim for the very first time, you go underground, you escape from the cells, when the dragon attacks the town. When you get out into the main open world, it's beautiful, right? The music kicks in, you go towards that small town next to the river where there's people chopping logs, and you're allowed to stay at that person's house for the night, right? It's really cool. But Oblivion's beginning is way better. You're introduced to this whole massive open world with one arrow and one objective, but you can just go wherever you want. Do whatever faction quest you want, although I wouldn't recommend it because you'll get your ass kicked. But it looks like it's just a wonderful game. It's a wonderful game, and a lot of people are going to get to experience it for the first time, and people going back to it are going to experience it with a whole new coat of paint. The game looks fantastic, and the thing is, they've added things like insects in the air, right? Something the original game didn't have. When you go in water, there's fish swimming around. They've made the original way better, and that gives me hope. That gives me hope for Fallout 3. Now, you may see Fallout 3 Remake in the title. That's not clickbait. So about 2 years ago, during the whole ABC FTC court case, ABK, a bunch of stupid letters, someone from Microsoft accidentally posted a list of all of Bethesda's upcoming games upwards of 2026. And, I'm sure that person is definitely still working at Microsoft right now. That game had listed on it a bunch of other Bethesda games which still aren't out yet. It had Indiana Jones on this list. It had Oblivion Remastered. And it also had Fallout 3 Remastered. Now, after seeing Oblivion, we're calling it a remake, and knowing that this team might also be doing Fallout 3, because we know it exists. Let me tell you, I am absolutely giddy. I love Oblivion. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Fallout 3, not even kidding, Fallout 3 is even I love Fallout 3 way more than Oblivion. And you've heard how I've been talking about Oblivion. Fallout 3, when it came out in, 2008 or 2009? So long ago. But when that came out, like, that experience for me was unlike anything else. It was my first Fallout game. When you step out the vault for the first time and you find that supermarket, and you're introduced to a bunch of gameplay mechanics such as lock picking, hacking computer terminals, being introduced to ghouls, like, that whole thing clicked for me, right? And I was blown away. And, when you play Fallout 3 now, it's still an amazing game, but the whole game is grey, green, and yellow at the same time. There's not much variety in the landscape. I mean, like, if you play it on PC, there's a lot of mods in place that make the world look a bit more, I don't want to say colourful, but there's more variety, right? If you play it on console, like, it is meant to be Washington, D.C., where it's just rubble everywhere. I get that, but my God, the whole game is green. Just green, grey, and yellow at the same time. And I think people are going to be really happy if this is the studio working on that game, because if they have that level of visual fidelity in Fallout 3, my God, people are in for a treat. Like, people will take the day off, or maybe even the week off, to play that game. Maybe I will as well. But, like, Oblivion, that style of fidelity in a Fallout game, it'll be chef's kiss. It will be. Now, when will that come? I 100% believe that the Fallout remaster or remake will launch around the same time as Fallout Season 2 of the television show, which launches next year. I think that's going to be around June. I think that would make a lot of sense. Launching the game around the same time of a television show seems to work for these video game adaptations. Man, like, I know people have been fed up in the past of remakes and remasters, because we seem to get a lot, but, like, when you have something like this that's had a lot of work put into it, and it's not just an upscale or anything like that, like, it's a full-on, I'm using the term remake, it's clearly going to be worth playing. We're always going to have the originals. People are always going to have the originals to play on PC with the mods. But, like, when you have a team like Virtuos making a game like this, my God, they know what they're doing. And they clearly like the game. They clearly know what they're doing. So, yeah, Fallout 3 by the same studio. That team, they're definitely going to get a lot more work in the next few years. Apparently, if Metal Gear Solid 3 Remake does well, Konami's going to get 1 and 2 made. So I can imagine that's the team that's going to do it as well. But, yeah, gamers, we win. Like, you're going to have people, there's already people console warring on Twitter about Oblivion, but the truth is, like, we all bloody won today. It's in Game Pass. If you want, you can get the deluxe edition upgrade for, I think it's £9 or $9.99. My God, it's just, like, so much content there as a gamer. And for people that have never played Oblivion, you're lucky. You may need a guide or two, because that game is huge open world, lots of quests. Thankfully now, with modern lighting techniques, you won't actually struggle to get through those tombs, because a lot of tombs back in the day in Xbox 360 were almost too dark to the point where you had to turn the brightness up on your television. Looks like that won't be the case anymore. But, man, like, I'm such a good mood today as a gamer, because, like, look, I may talk about Mass Effect all the time, maybe too much, but, like, to have Oblivion, one of my favorite games of all time, remade like this, to have that same studio make Metal Gear Solid 3, which comes out in August, so much love and care that's gone into that. And for people that don't know, they've added and changed so much to Metal Gear Solid 5 Delta. Oh, sorry, Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta. I hate the naming convention for these games. They've made it so you can change camo on the fly without going into your menu. You know how Snake used to get damage over time, where you'd have to, like, maybe pull out bullets or, stitch yourself up? Well, in the remake, you keep scars over time, and you have to keep bandages on. So, like, if you play this game on hard, you're going to be covered from head to toe in bandages. and that'll be pretty funny in cutscenes. But yeah, they've done a lot for that game, and they've clearly done a lot for Oblivion. Gamers have won, and my God, I'm just drooling at the thought of what the hell they're gonna do for Fallout 3. That's gonna be bloody incredible. Excuse me while I take a drink because I've been talking for like an hour and 19 minutes. But yeah, if people want to download that, it's 123 gigabytes. I believe you can play it over the cloud. I'd be interested if anyone has been playing over the cloud in chat because, I want to wait for the whole thing to download. I think, streaming is a viable thing for a lot of people, but sometimes that resolution drops. Last year I was playing a lot of Fortnite and Forza via streaming, and let me tell you, the frame rate, perfect. The resolution may dip, though. It looks like you're playing something on a Game Boy, but that was just my internet at the time. But yeah, and by the way, back to the whole, launching this game via a shadow drop. I think a lot of people didn't believe this was going to happen because it is an Elder Scrolls game, right? How the hell do you launch an Elder Scrolls game via a shadow drop? Because they would have had millions of pre-orders if they didn't put this out today, which blows my mind. I've seen people bring up, is this the biggest shadow drop of all time? I think it might actually be the biggest shadow drop of all time. Hi-Fi Rush was a big deal in 2023, I believe that launched. Really cool game. And then Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, that was a big deal. And that was, in January? But this is, a whole other level of craziness. To the point where people I know in the Xbox community were asking me if this game would actually launch in Game Pass. That's how big of a game Elder Scrolls is. It's crazy, right? People that are actively on Xbox, we all know that these games launch in Game Pass, but people were asking me because, that's how big Elder Scrolls is. And, as you can see the footage on screen right now, this is a new game. This is a new game. It's the biggest shadow drop of all time. And as someone that studied business with a marketing module, it doesn't make any sense, but it works. But yeah, hundreds of thousands of people were watching this live stream, wanting to know what it was like. Because, look, this could have just been a 4K 60 port with some PC textures. It could have been that. But, Bethesda, they've been, really pro-consumer with this as well. So, for people that don't know, on PC, there's been this project in the works called Oblivion, where they basically taken the Skyrim engine and completely remaking Oblivion in that engine with its assets and, Skyrim gameplay. And, I've seen a lot of people online, they were really harsh towards this remake before it was showed off because it was going to crap on, Oblivion. But it turns out, Oblivion, the developers, they are completely okay with it. In fact, Bethesda sent them codes so they can play the game. So, I think everyone's going to win in the end. If you're on PC and you want to play a Oblivion when that whole thing releases, you're also going to have this as well. It launched in Game Pass. It's a shadow drop. I still can't believe that it's here. Because, if I was Microsoft, I would have announced this in January, hyped it up for months, get some of the biggest streamers on the planet to play it, and then, cover it in the summer showcase, and then release it in July. But no, we get it dropped in April. Now, I kind of hate Microsoft at the same time because I'm trying to play Avowed, right? I don't know how I'm going to get through all these games. So where I will say, especially when the prices of things are going up at the minute, consoles are going up in price, games are probably going to go up in price as well. You have this 300 plus hour game launching in Game Pass. I don't know how I'm going to cope with it. And then I've got Blueprints as well, which I heard people can get addicted to and put a lot of time into. So who knows what's going to happen. But hey, I think it's a good problem to have. Again, gamers are in for I'm trying not to swear. They're in for a bloody good time. Because this is a game that blew my mind back in the day. It blew a lot of people's minds. Back at the time when this came out, I knew someone that played Oblivion from launch day for 36 hours straight. Right, no sleep, barely moved. And like at the time, I thought, can the game really be that addictive? Yeah, it can be. I never did a 36-hour session of it, but it's addictive. Like going out in that open world, it's intoxicating to say the least. We'll talk about Oblivion, or should I say Elder Scrolls 6 next, because that game isn't as far out as people think. People think it's like 2028. It's not that far out. That game is more than likely 2027. If anything, I think Microsoft and Bethesda, they're trying to get that game as a launch title for the Xbox. We'll call it Xbox Next, shall we? I think Microsoft wants that to be a launch title. Microsoft launched the hardware, unfortunately, this generation, because the Xbox Series X, I think it's a bloody incredible console, but it didn't launch with any first-party software. And, I had a great time with the console. It was unfortunate that Halo got delayed, but it is what it is. We don't have a time machine. I think they are, working with Bethesda to make sure they can get that game out as a launch title. It's going to be a marquee game to show off what that hardware can do. Obviously, it'll launch, on PC, and maybe, I don't even think it'll launch on PlayStation at the same time, because if Xbox is launching their console ahead, maybe by a year, then it'll be exclusive for a year. But I 100% think that's going to be the situation. It'll obviously be on PC with, fancy graphics cards and whatnot. But I 100% think Elder Scrolls 6 launches, November 2027 with the next-gen Xbox, along with the Xbox handheld. And that's going to be a good time. Now, what we do know is that, the creation engine, it's basically been enhanced for a new generation, out past Starfield, a lot of how should I put it? A lot of work started on Elder Scrolls the day Starfield went out. So there's hundreds of developers working on Elder Scrolls 6 right now. So I think we're going to know more about that game maybe next year, because, with previous Elder Scrolls games in the past, they've actually been shown off maybe a year in advance. I think gamers are going to be in for a treat when 6 comes out, because we do have some rumors. Apparently dragons are returning in the new game. Dragons are going to be more dynamic and basically climb on buildings and stuff. So the things you saw in the beginning of Starfield, Skyrim, you're going to see that dynamically throughout the entire game. Apparently cities aren't going to have load screens, much like Starfield, because those cities don't have loads. Unless you go to that city in Neon, which is, inside a massive structure. But yeah, and it's also going to have the shipbuilding mechanic from Starfield. So you're going to have ship-to-ship combat in Elder Scrolls 6 while there's dragons flying around. I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds bloody fantastic. Because I love Starfield. I love the space combat in that game, possibly more than anything. They absolutely nailed it. The fact that you can basically make whatever ship you want. I've seen people post videos of the NX-01 Enterprise in that game. Didn't even know you could make that. People have made the Normandy, from Mass Effect. I just don't have the patience to make out like that. I would love to at some point, but yeah, it looks like you're going to get the best things from Starfield, things from Skyrim people love, and even Oblivion, and they're going to mesh that together in Elder Scrolls 6. And man, look, I see a lot of people hate on Bethesda all the time, mainly a lot of the big streamers. I don't understand why. Starfield's been this huge punching bag for some reason. I loved my time with Starfield. I think a lot of the hate stems from that one. It was exclusive when it launched, still is technically, to one console, and the fact that there's a lot of empty planets. Well, in a NASA-centric or realistic-centric space setting with no aliens, why would you expect there be stuff to do on every planet? I think it's just people being nitpicky. If you want Star Wars, you're going to play a Star Wars game. If you want, something like No Man's Sky, where there's these massive space worms and, they get a new expansion every month because whatever they do with that engine clearly works. A Bethesda game's a Bethesda game. Xbox tax. I don't like using that term, but there is something very Xbox taxy about the whole Starfield situation. And I love Starfield, right? Starfield's best parts were obviously the city-based elements and the bases around cities, where it felt more alive. The fact that you would have spaceships landing down around you, that was just super cool. And the fact that you could go to someone's spaceship, get inside, take out the crew, and take their spaceship as yours. As a lifelong sci-fi fan, do you know how bloody good that was? That was amazing, right? So the fact that we're going to have that in Elder Scrolls 6, but with, naval combat and ships, we're going to be able to swing to other people's ships, maybe, I'm guessing, which you can't do in Skull and Bones at the minute. My God, Bethesda are cooking, right? They clearly listen to feedback, up until these leaks happened. The number one thing I wanted in Elder Scrolls 6, I wanted the dragons to return. The dragons made the open world so much better in Skyfall. My God, did I just say Skyfall? The bloody Bond film. Skyrim. I hate the naming conventions today. I'm all over the place. But if they have dragons in there with naval combat, and you have maybe Oblivion-style side quests and storytelling, you're going to have one of the best games that generation. But yeah, I do think that game is like 2027. It's going to be around the next-gen console launch. But yeah, what can I say? People are going to be in for a treat. Microsoft's cooking. People have been saying Microsoft doesn't have any games for a long time. It's the meme thing. People like to fanboy or whatnot. But like, Microsoft has so many games at the minute, they have to shadow drop an Elder Scrolls game. Do you know how crazy that is? If you go back 2 generations ago, or basically any point in time in the past, like Xbox, they never had a strong first-party output because they didn't actually have a lot of studios. Go back to 360, they had like 90 million consoles out, and every game they put out would sell like 10 million copies. Halo 4 sold I think that sold like 14 million copies. Gears of War 3 sold more copies than every exclusive combined on PlayStation 3. That was what Aaron Greenberg said back in the day. And, but they wouldn't release games that often. Xbox 360 exclusives came out once a year, if you're lucky, maybe twice. They'd have a Fable now and then. They'd have Forza Horizon or Forza game. But it would be very rare when an Xbox game came out. And then with the Xbox One generation, they tried to partner with a bunch of studios, as you may know. They tried to partner with a studio that made Crackdown 3. That had development issues. It went to a different studio. It got remade several times. And when the game came out, it wasn't exactly what we were showing. Although I did have actually fun with the campaign. And, they tried to make a game with Platinum Games called Scalebound. We all know what happened there. And, they tried to partner with all these external studios, and something would always fall through. Okay, for some reason, Siri is dictating myself again. But, Microsoft always had these plans fall through with these external studios. And then in 2018, Microsoft bought a bunch of different studios, including Playground Games, Ninja Theory, Compulsion Games. They made The Initiative. And they also bought Undead Labs. It took a while for Microsoft to get any games out because games take a lot of time to make. And then we had the pandemic happen, right? That put all these games on the back burner, right? According to the leak list, the Oblivion Remake and Indiana Jones were meant to be out in 2023, right? So these games were pushed back quite a bit. So where people were saying Microsoft had no games or they have no studios making games, they were buying studios. They bought Obsidian, and they bought the studio that makes Psychonauts 2. I've completely forgot the name. But they bought all these studios. They bought In Exile, and behind the scenes, where everyone's arguing online all the time, Microsoft Game Studios, Bethesda, now Activision, they've been cooking, right? They're cooking so many bloody games that when Matt Booty said about a year and a half ago that they want to get to a point where they can launch one major new game every quarter. If you look at this year so far, they kind of exceeded that, right? They launched Avowed in February. They launched Ninja Gaiden in January. They launched South of Midnight in April. They have Doom: The Dark Ages launching in May, right? They have Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remake, which launched today, and The Outer Worlds 2, which is coming later this year. So like, with all these people arguing behind the scenes, like Microsoft's finally to a point now they've cooked, right? And their quality has gone up, right? Starfield, I don't care what people say, that is a high quality game. Hellblade, great title, short but great, technical showpiece. Indiana Jones, do you know I've only ever gave 6 games a 10 out of 10? 6. And by the way, none of those games were Microsoft games. Indiana Jones was one game of those 6, or say it is the 7th game. I gave a 10 out of 10. Double Fine, thank you. I always forget the name of these studios, but yeah, Double Fine's one of the studios they bought. In fact, Psychonauts 2 wouldn't even have boss battles if it wasn't for Microsoft. And if people have played Psychonauts 2, the boss battles in that game, as few as they are amazing boss battles. But yeah, like Microsoft's cooks, right? We're having higher quality games on a more consistent basis. Microsoft has so many games coming out, they have to shadow drop games like Elder Scrolls, right? So like, if you're an Xbox-centric person, maybe you just like their games, like, it's a good time. Now, people are still a bit salty or, angry or annoyed or whatever, and it's understandable about the whole moving away from exclusive content thing, but if you look at where the industry's moving, if you look at where, the price of products are going up, Sony's raising the price of the PlayStation 5 digital edition in the UK, Australia, some other places in Europe. Nintendo's charging $80 for some of their games. Like, the industry's in a weird place, and, people are having less and less money. People are joking about eggs constantly on Twitter. You have Microsoft with a good service such as Game Pass letting you play hundreds of games. These games are day one. They have a bunch of poor consumer moves, and Microsoft's not perfect. I've had my issues with, Microsoft doing the multi-platform thing when they are clearly cooking. It seemed like a misstep to me. They ended the backwards compatibility program way too early. They should actually advertise on the box that it does, backwards compatible games such as like 360 and stuff. It's not even mentioned on the box. Just things like that. They have issues. DVR functionality, right? I think DVR functionality on Xbox Series X and S could be way better. We're limited with options. But outside of that, Microsoft, they are cooking. A lot of cool games here. And, we have rumors that they're also making a new Prototype game. For people that don't know, Prototype is an open world. We can call it an anti-hero game. I've been wanting a new one of them for 15 years since the last one. It's been a long time. So like, I think Microsoft putting their games on other platforms, like, where it, like, from an old school standpoint, it's kind of weird. It's weird to see, a Forza on a PlayStation. At the end of the day, I'm still an Xbox fan. I'm still an Xbox content creator, Believe me when I say, like, there's people I know, they clearly switched platforms to make more money, because if you plaster PlayStation in your thumbnail and, have a bunch of PlayStation stuff, like, you get more eyes on your content. You just do. But I personally, I've been a fan of Xbox since the beginning. The Xbox 360, I will always say it's the best console of all time. I still have a Slim hooked up to play some games. But like, Xbox with their poor consumer moves, the backwards compatibility, the amount of first-party games they're coming out with, like, I'm a fairly happy guy when it comes to being a content creator and a gamer. I'm perfectly set. I understand how, like, it is weird seeing stuff on other consoles, but, it is what it is. We're going to see things like Marathon on Xbox, The baseball game is on Xbox as well. I don't know if it's on Switch. But, yeah, the industry's changing. changing slowly. There was a time when people thought PlayStation wouldn't put any games on PC. And as far as I know, they just launched Spider-Man 2, I think, on PC. And a bunch of other games. So, like, times are changing. It's weird. Just Nintendo, the old guard, they clearly aren't putting games on PC because their output just doesn't stop. I think it will be a weird thing when we see their games fly off the shelf at $80. Will Microsoft, Sony, and Ubisoft, 2K will definitely follow suit. Will they start charging $80 for games? I think it's a slippery slope. Like I've said last week and the week before, vote with your wallet. Like, don't get me wrong. I think the Switch 2, I think it's going to be a fantastic console. I think a lot of people are going to be happy with it. I think the fact... I don't actually have a problem with the Switch 2's price. I think that's fair for what you're getting in a tablet-sized console, because that's what it is. It's essentially a tablet. I think the technology you're getting in a compact size like that is perfectly fine, but I think, these $80 game prices, that's just too much. It's way too much. I think $70 is too much for video games. I think a fair price for video games in dollars is $60. I think $60 is fine, and if we're talking in pounds, I think $59.99 is fine for a big game. But when I saw the price of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remake today for £49, and I saw Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 edition is like $75. Like, why are we giving Nintendo a pass? I think Nintendo gets a pass across the entire industry for some reason. I grew up with Nintendo. Like, I respect them for basically bringing back gaming in the West, because after the whole video game crash thing, it was Nintendo that brought them back. But man, people really need to be vocal. I know a lot of people that grew up with Nintendo as their childhood console or whatever. Like, they maybe don't want to criticize Nintendo that much. But people need to be vocal about this stuff. People need to say, like, the price of these games is ridiculous. Mario Kart World looks fantastic. I think a Mario Kart game in an open world, that's going to be super fun. But they want to charge $80 because of the amount of content in it. And I can't help but think, and I mentioned this last week, that I'm sure it's going to be filled with tons of characters and lots of cool races and items. But how can you look at that game and say that's going to be $80 worth of video game, but Forza Horizon 5 launched at $59.99? Am I taking crazy pills? That just, something doesn't make sense, because, in Forza, they have licensed music. They have licensed cars. The hell, there's even like a Bond car pack in Forza Horizon 4. Right, these games clearly cost a lot of money to make. So you're telling me that Mario Kart Worlds, as great as it's going to be, are you telling me that game cost more to make than Forza? I'm not a developer. I'm not going to pretend to be, but the math ain't mathin'. I believe that's the phrase anyway. But yeah, people vote with the wallets. Like, look, no matter what I say today, If you have your heart set on getting a Switch 2, get a Switch 2. Have a lot of fun with it. I'm sure there's going to be some really cool games on it. But I keep going back to the whole price thing for video games, because I noticed when video games went up to $70, I saw a lot more people in my feed on all platforms talk about how, look, they want to wait for sales more often now. And unless you make content, and even then you don't have to, but there is no reason to buy a game day one. There's no reason to. FOMO isn't actually a thing. It doesn't exist, right? You don't need to play a game because someone else is playing it. Do you know what we call that in real world? Peer pressure. You're not going to jump off a bridge because someone else is doing it. You're not going to smoke a cigarette because someone else is doing it. It's peer pressure, right? It's peer pressure in video games. It's wants and have-nots. The whole FOMO thing does not exist in real life. It just doesn't. My point is, vote with your wallets. I know it's a bit of a tangent I'm on because, why am I talking about the Switch 2 on a Xbox-centric podcast? But as we saw with $70, the prices will go up across the board for all consoles by all publishers. And for people, I know most of the people that listen to this show are from the US, like, video games in the UK were about £37 during the 360 generation. And do you know what happened when the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 came out? Game prices went up to £50 to £55, depending on the publisher. And no one batted an eye. No one. Nobody talked about it. There were no articles about it. I was like one of the maybe 2 people on Twitter talking about how, back in 2013, about how these prices are ridiculous, right? So I complained about £50 games. I complained about 60. I complained about 65. I complained about 70. Damn right, I'm going to complain about £80 games. That's ridiculous. Sorry for the rambling, but yeah, I just wanted to get it out there because, like, look, the Switch launches in July, I believe, and how nice is it that we get the prices raised on us over here for, the PlayStation 5. Maybe the Xbox will go up at some point as well. We don't know, but it's ridiculous, the price of everything at the minute. And the funny thing is, the gaming space is weird because you have people on social media, they brag about spending X amount of money on games, how they don't rent games, how they want games to go up in price. They want to charge $100 for GTA. They are completely okay with it. That's why I think there's going to be another game crash. I think it's people letting this happen, not being vocal enough, because look, the biggest video game market in the world is the US. And you know what these companies don't have the balls to do? Raise the price of consoles in the US. Because, and I love this about Americans, you're actually vocal about this crap. You'll actually, vote with your wallet. And that's why, these companies, they didn't raise the price of the Xbox or PlayStation. The Switch isn't going to go up in price because people will vote with their wallets. But Europe, UK, Australia, I think they did it in Canada as well, raised the price of everything. The Oculus, a couple of years ago, went up in price. In 2022, the PlayStation 5 went up in price for the first time. It went up again as of last week. The price of controllers gone up. Games have gone up. Like, hell, I even saw today Amiibos have gone up in price. Now, I have one Amiibo. I can't remember how I got it, but I have one. I'm pretty sure they don't cost $40 to make. But yeah, bit of a tangent because, the game prices thing will affect everyone. Anyway, now, sorry we couldn't get Logan in chat. I don't know what he's been up to. He's probably playing Oblivion, and I can't blame him, to be honest, because, like, if I could, I would be as well. But anyway, everyone in chat has been amazing. He'll be back next week. I should be having a new video out by the next show. Timing is a bit weird, but it is a video I've been working on for a while. But again, everyone in chat has been amazing. No fighting whatsoever. And I always like to say this is the best chat on YouTube. Nobody argues. It's always chill, and it's always appreciated. Anyway, we're back for a new episode next Tuesday, same time. We might go a little bit earlier, considering I would like to talk about Oblivion for a long time. But yeah, that's next Tuesday. Hope everyone has a good day and enjoy Oblivion. If it's your first time, take your time, right? These games can be very long, but savor it, because we only get one Elder Scrolls game, a decade now, and who knows how long it's going to be till 6. Like I said, I do think it's going to be 2027, but if you're playing for the first time, or even if you're replaying it, like, take your time with it. Too many people rush games these days, and I think we need to savor them more. Anyway, back the same time next week. If it's going to be earlier, I'll let people know on Twitter. I'm out, everybody. Peace.